All right, so board and batten. It's one of the sidings that's kind of like fun to put up. The boards, 1 by 10 by 12. Doesn't matter how high it is, your barn might be different. You'll see I'm screwing them in on one side. This is really important for expansion and contraction of these boards throughout different seasons. They're actually pretty green right now, so it might take a little bit of time to get down to the right moisture content, so they're gonna shrink a little bit. By only screwing down one side, you leave this side able to kind of shrink in that way, if you can picture that. Now, because we're screwing it in on one side, we're going to leave this gap, so there's some room for, again, expansion. And to cover up that gap, we're going to put on our batten. So this is 1 by 4. I like this ratio. I think it does it's pretty attractive to the eye. Some people use skinnier battens, but I'm gonna leave some bigger gaps and use some bigger battens, which gives me a little bit of leeway as far as getting stuff level. Speaking of getting stuff level, my barn sides are not exactly straight up and down because I built them with ground timbers. I'm kind of feathering my way into a level plane here. You really can't tell as long as you get your batten straight. Everything looks pretty good. Because I use the OSB, I'm going to use screws. Now, I'm using 2.5-inch Torx head screws to screw in my 1 by 10 and 3.5-inch Torx head screws to screw in my batten because, I have to go through, say, 2 inches of material for my batten. Let's talk about how I'm cutting these things. On one side of the board, I'm cutting a 30-degree angle, and when that's screwed onto your barn, basically what happens is if rain drips down your board, this acts as a bit of a drip edge, so the rain kind of runs down and then drips off that point, instead of soaking that entire bottom of the board. On the other side, I'm just doing a straight cut at 12 feet because that's the height of my barn. As far as grain direction goes, how am I putting up the board? This is one of the trickier things to find online when I was kind of learning how to do this. If you can see, this is the bark side of this board, and it's kind of like a smile. If you flip it this way, it's kind of like a rainbow. But wood tends to curve in, like with the curve, like it wants to be a tree again. That's how I think of it. It wants to curve around the tree again. When it cups, it's going to cup in the same direction as this wood grain. If you could picture this is the barn, I'm screwing these boards with the bark side out. So that curve, that smile is going into the barn, and that's your outside. And then for the batten, I found with 1 by 4, there's not a ton of cupping going on. I was doing the same thing with the batten, but then I've decided to just, since I'm screwing it down right in the middle, I'm just picking the best face. Whatever looks the prettiest, that's what I'm doing for the batten. But always for the boards, bark side out. And that actually gives it a little bit more protection because you don't have all these open end grain pieces. See how that's fuzzy and that's soft? Bark out, grain in, go from there. I prefer to just work my way down. Some people will put up all the 10-inch and then all the battens. I just find I get kind of bored with that, so I end up doing, a few boards and then a few battens, see how it looks, see where I need to straighten things out, and then just go from there. So why don't we work our way down? And when we get to the window, that's kind of the exciting part here. The board and batten goes pretty quickly. The windows take a little extra time, but I've got a nice little trim package that I've been using with just kind of the 1 by 4 with a sill. So it looks pretty sharp. So we got a lot of this to put up, so let's work our way across and we'll meet you at the window. Okay, so we've done a pretty good job of cruising down this wall with our board and batten. You can see so I've left the battens off because we've got to do this window frame feature, whatever you want to call it. But just look at how springy some of these boards are, and then when you put the battens on, it just sucks them all in. So anyway, that's besides the point. The next thing we need to do is frame in this window. And basically what we're going to do is just 1 by 4 all the way around the outside with a sill. And again, I left the battens off of the lower section and that top section because if we were to put those in there, we'd actually have to cut them out, put our window frame in. We want that on the same plane as our batten. I'm gonna grab some pieces and I'll show you what we're gonna do for this window frame. Okay, so I've got my 2 side pieces here. Now these are the same height as my window. So I'll line those up. I could probably be more precise about this, but it's all right. All right, and the reason I do those first is because for my top piece and bottom piece, all I have to do, 46.5, I just have to measure across. So boom, and so now I can cut my top piece and my bottom piece. Love how that just tightens everything up. I've cut my, so I could just actually put this in here like that and it'd look great, but I ripped one of these 1x2s in half. And so now I have a 1x2 that I can put on top of here and then install it. And now we've got this nice little sill feature, which I really like. I'm actually just going to brad nail this on there and then screw it in place. And between the screws on the bottom and these top sections of frame, it's not gonna go anywhere. So there's that guy. And we just line up the side. So I think what I'm gonna do is knock out the rest of these battens, and then we'll see what we can do about this top section and see how we can film it, hopefully. All right, moving up to the second level here. Now, there's so many videos showing you how to do, bear with me with the angle, I know it's a little weird, but you know, there's a lot of videos showing you how to do just these flat sides, which is one thing, but doing this peak is another. And so the trick is, you know, we want all of this, all of our boards and all of our battens to follow all the way up like it's one solid piece. The trick that I found is your first board shouldn't be that outside one, and it shouldn't be one with one of these rafter supports in it. This just goes straight to the roofing, and there's nothing in between, so we can cut just a perfect, well, our roof is 12-12, so it's gonna be a 45-degree angle, but there's nothing to cut around. So that's gonna be our first landmark. Now, when we install this, we can measure everything off of that one, and it makes everything a lot easier. Now, the other thing, I'm gonna cut my boards and my battens at the same time, because in order to get everything flush against the top, I'm just gonna use my board to measure the height of my batten, and I'll show you that up close and personal. Let's get a measurement here for our tall side, and we've got a little bit of wiggle room because we're actually gonna run a horizontal piece along the tops and cover up this seam. So 34. Let's go cut that piece and I'll show you what I do to measure the batten. All right, so this seems complicated, but it's really not. So I've got my angle. This is my board I've cut. 34 inches long with my 45-degree angle on it. Now here's the batten I'm gonna use. So what I'll do is I'll cut this first. I'm basically just gonna put this, I'm gonna match it up to where I would, and I'm just kind of eyeballing, you know, so if you think about this from the back side, this is gonna be covering up the gap. And I'm just gonna mark that end. So if you can picture this, board goes on, batten goes on top of that, our angles match up, and everything will be flush against the top. Before I get too ahead of myself, that one we just talked about is up there. But look, we've got this support here for our overhang. All I do is I measure over, so it's 6.5 inches is where that thing lands on this next board. So I measure over, 10.5, and we'll call it 6.25. 10.5, 6.25 is where we're gonna put that in. 6.25 and 10.5. So what we do, we'll go up 10.5, and we'll go over 6.25. So this is the corner of that 2x4. And because everything's a 12-12, that's the bottom. We'll go over 1.5 inches, and I like to make it a little bit proud because that's the width of our support. And we're just working with our 45-degree speed square. And there's our rafter support. All right. Now the other thing is it's got like a 1-inch thing under it, so I'll just kind of carve that out too. Now we can just plug that right in. All right, now you can see what I was up to. So the angle is perfect with our roof angle. We got around that 2x6 that's supporting our rafter. This is that little 1-inch piece I was talking about. That's just more or less for support. And our batten fits right in. So we'll put one more piece over there, and then we'll work our way all the way across. We're gonna do the same window frame as we did for the last one, same as that guy. And we can pretty much just keep on going based on this one piece that we put in with a flush top. So I hope that's helpful for at least this peaked section. Just measure and cut, and sometimes cut twice. So let's get this done. All right, guys, I realize I'm stopping this on kind of an abrupt, weird note, but I am gonna make 2 videos out of this siding project. One of them is gonna be kind of a vlog, and then there's this one, which is hopefully the more informative one. I wanted to kind of get all the technical stuff down for you, and then we can kind of have fun with the whole siding project on that other video. So that's kind of why this one's ending where it is, just so I can pack in as much information but not make it too long. That said, I hope you do join me on that next video, and we'll do a lot more time lapses of the whole process and the siding and how it all turned out, and what I used for stain, because that's probably one of my more favorite things I did during this project. So guys, thanks for watching. Please subscribe, share it with anybody you can. Love to grow this channel. We'll see you next time. Bye.